Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the third episode of 4 of the How to Define Your Digital Journey web series. I have with me tonight my co-host Brandon Schaefer, and we are very excited to get going. Hey, Brandon, how are you doing today?
Dude, I'm fired up today, Brian, man. I know this is the third one, man. We got a great guest, Lenny K. I know you're going to pump him up here in a little bit, but dude, we've been doing these. It hasn't been easy, man. It's been a lot of work, dude. It's been a lot, and you put in 10 times more work than I've put in. But I am putting together these slides and stuff. I know it's paying off. I know a lot of people have given me positive feedback, and tonight's going to be, a barn burner as well. So looking forward to it.
Likewise, Brandon. I think, like you said, and this thing will stay true, the third time is the charm. We went pre-recorded to live, and today we should hopefully be smooth sailing, knock on wood. So for anybody that missed the first 2 episodes, the first one was the power of going digital, covering digital transformation at a macro level and the core 3 phases that you must go through in your business. Episode 2 was why it's time for change and the 4 key drivers of what's creating change for businesses and why they're transforming. So if you haven't had a chance to check those out, head to our website to sign up for all the episodes, guest info, and guides at goincipientcorp.com/how to define your digital journey. And with all that being said, Brandon, let's jump into today's episode.
I'm with you.
So today we're going to be covering how big brands have transformed. Just trying to get the slide up here. We have an extremely special guest with us today. We're very excited to dive in, both from the business strategy and the technical side. So without further ado, let me bring Lenny K in to introduce himself. Hey, Lenny, how are you doing? It's great to have you on the show.
Thanks, everyone. Glad to be here. I'm Lenny. I'm CEO of Greenboard, which is an ERP solution for the furniture industry. I'm also the CEO of Emma Mason, which is a furniture company. We sell furniture on the internet. We have a couple of stores, and we do interior design.
Very cool. And it's great to have you on. I think we're really excited to dive into both, right, the Greenboard product side, which we've kind of internally called it as a light ERP, also strong CRM capabilities, right, for your customers and helping them drive the closure rates. And then, of course, all of your experience in the industry as a whole, and with Emma Mason, your core furniture retail location, right? So it's great to have you, Lenny. Before we go too deep into the episode, could you give a little bit of a background of just how you got involved in the furniture industry in the first place, and how have things snowballed from your first company to now building your own product and growing out into these different verticals?
I was always in the furniture industry. I think my very first job was in the furniture industry. I worked for someone, and then we became partners, and then ultimately we sold that business. And I went into a different furniture business with a different partner. That was in 2004. And it's still the existing company. Emma Mason is just one company. We have a bunch of different brands. And probably the best known brand's Unlimited Furniture. That's the brand that we started in 2004. And, we've started small and we grew the business. We're probably doing maybe $50 million in revenue now. And then beyond that, somewhere along the way, we started building our own software. First it was a CRM system, then it was an ERP system. And we primarily did it for us, but as time went on, we made it available to other folks in the furniture industry and made it a separate business out of it.
Very cool. Very cool. So as, of course, you mentioned, you've been in the furniture industry for a while. Of course, I think, most people understand what the retail side is of, purchasing the different types of furniture, from anything from bedrooms to dining rooms to living rooms. But where did you first get your start, Lenny? What was the core products that you guys were selling as you developed, the initial brand? And how did you go about choosing where you wanted to next, or what products you'd offer as the next vertical?
We started very small. We started selling one bedroom, one really no configuration. So normally you'd go into a furniture store and you could say, give me an extra nightstand or take this off. With us, we sold it one way, and we did it because it was easy to manage inventory that way. We didn't have to worry about too much customization. And once that worked well, then we've expanded, and we brought in a dining room, we brought in a living room. At a certain point, we had a lot, maybe 6 or 7 different products. We opened a warehouse. At first, we ran it as a warehouse where it felt like you were getting a deal because you came in, it was off the beaten path, and it was a warehouse. So people saw that it was real, and then ultimately we turned it into a showroom and started making it look more like a furniture store.
Very exciting. Yeah, like you said, it's always good to start lean, right? Improve the model and grow from there. And whether it's from the furniture side, right, or my understanding of what led to Greenboard, right, was your guys' own internal need and developing something for yourself.
Oh yeah. So
what do you from there?
Yeah, that was a great story. What we used to do is we used to keep track of everything on index cards. So whenever somebody would come into the store or somebody would call, we had a, I do some presentations for like the software and the importance of following up. And I even have a picture of the original box where we used to keep the index cards. So every time someone would come in, would get their name, their phone number, how they heard about us, what they were interested in. And we were pretty organized, so we'd organize everything. And every day, most people end up not buying. So every day we would call them, say you were in the store yesterday, you called, you were interested. And we essentially had an index card-based CRM system. And it was extremely effective, but it was extremely manual. So if somebody wanted to take off, you would just pass on your box of index cards to the person who would cover for you, and that person would call. So that's, I think, the story how we got the software, because at a certain point we realized we needed a better solution. So we wrote, our first version of the CRM in probably 2005, 2006, and built it from there.
That's an amazing story, and we're definitely looking to digging in a lot deeper onto that, Lenny. But before I take too much of the juice all up front, I think that's a great intro to lead us in. People understand the background both from the furniture side, right, and what it takes from the distribution and retail side, as well as we'll definitely be digging a lot deeper on the Greenboard and how you've utilized your domain expertise and years of experience in the furniture side to build a great CRM or light ERP that really caters to the specific needs of those in the furniture industry. So without further ado,
I have a quick question.
Yeah, Brandon, jump in.
Lenny. What were the 3 questions you just said? What's their name? What they're interested in? What were the 3 things? I'm writing them down on a piece of paper right now, because those are the core basics.
Basically, their name, their phone number. The phone number is important because you always want to follow up with them.
Yeah.
And then how they heard about us, because we wanted to know. We didn't have any of these digital tracking tools that exist today.
Okay.
So we wanted to know what kind of advertising was working, whether it was the paper or the internet or something else. And then, we'd also write down comments, what happened in the call, what happened in the visit, how do we leave off? So when we follow up, we remember.
Nice. So for anybody watching this that's going to watch the repeat, always find these 4 pieces of information. What's their name? What's their phone number? The phone. There's nothing more important than the phone today. I know people try to do email and stuff. What they're interested in, and how they heard about you. You can solve you can solve any mystery in the world by answering those 4 questions. I'm telling you right now. And I've got one more question too. I don't mean to take you off the track here, Brian, but I just want everybody to know, for Lenny, has business been easy to build? You've probably wanted to bang your head through that wall, probably wanted to not go back, probably woke up in the morning wondering, how am I going to do this? Has it been an easy road for you, or has it been just like totally insane, crazy journey?
Look, nothing's ever easy, right? If it was easy, everyone would be doing it. So I wouldn't say it was crazy and insane, but it certainly wasn't easy. I think, as the business gets bigger and as it's gotten bigger over the years, we've always thought about that, once we cross that milestone, whether it's $1 million in revenue or $10 million in revenue, around that corner, it's going to get easier and things will be better. and we'll hire more staff to do some of the things that we can't do. But the reality is, as the business gets bigger and it becomes more complicated, it only becomes more difficult. It doesn't get any easier.
And that's why you need digital transformation. That's why it's so important. As you grow, you need to have these. You can't have 3x5 cards anymore, man. When as you grow, you need to expand like so quickly. But I'm not going to interrupt anymore, Brian. That was just two great thoughts that I wanted to ping you in on, and I'll be quiet 100%. The rest of the night. So
I hope not. It'll be a weird call for us. No, that sounds great, Brandon. With that, we'll jump into the first part again. Today's episode is all focusing on how we've seen bigger brands that we all follow, how they've utilized technology to transform their businesses, whether we realized it was the technology and that we were using that new experience or not. So before we dive into the 3 specific case studies that we want to cover today, we want to start, super macro, Brandon and Lenny, like we always do, kind of really bring in, where we are in the front of digital transformation and what the landscape looks like. So right here, I'm just going to pull up our first slide, and it's really just a brief note on, what are the overall impacts of revolutions, right? And these are not transformations. This is tying it strictly into more of the history side of things and the macro scale of things, what's happening in our industries, right? So it's no secret that everybody knows the Industrial Revolution, right? It was in the early 1800s. It would led to the majority of the manufacturing processes today, and it's who we have to blame for the 9-to-5. Right. So outside of that, a lot of that stemmed from the Industrial Revolution. After that was followed up by what a lot of people call the energy production revolution, which was just the creation of gas and the oil industries as we know them today, right? Making it much more of a commodity, easier to exchange those things. Every house had electricity or powered by oil, right? Then from there, it was followed by the third revolution, which was more recent in the last 15 to 20 years or so, which really introduced telecommunications, computing, and the electronics industries as a whole, right? The early IBMs, the early Cisco's, Spectrum, right? Everybody that kind of falls into those categories, as well as the gaming industries. And now where we stand is the fourth revolution, if people have realized it or not, right? Between the birth of the internet and newer or next generation technologies like open source technologies, AI, machine learning, and IoT, we are currently living in the fourth revolution, right? And the one thing that's happened with every single revolution, no matter what, Brandon and Lenny, right, is that businesses have been forced to rethink the way that they work and operate. They could not just slowly change. They were forced to compete, to revolutionize the way that they do business and to change the game completely, because all their competitors are also doing so and leveraging all these new tools. So a really good quote that really shows where, the different businesses are now, although a lot of them feel that they're implementing and that digitalization is essential, we only have 40% of the companies, right, that have fully implemented any digital initiative. So that does not mean that they've transformed. They've just attempted to implement some digital initiative, right? And this massive discrepancy between who feels the urgency versus who's executing has continued to grow and space in the gap year over year as more technologies come out and other companies fail to adapt. So one talking point here that I think is a good jumping point for all of us on where we see the world, really in the next 3 to 5 years in our businesses, is a quote from John Chambers from Cisco Systems, which just says, at least 40% of all businesses will die in the next 10 years if they do not figure out how to change the entire company to accommodate these new technologies. So with that quote, Lenny, right, I think a lot of what you've done, right, you've seen your own business transition and transform through different layers of business models, right, offering new products, and then even building out your own technology solution, which is also now a product, right, or a line of service for your company. So I'm curious, how true do you think that quotation is? Do you think it really rings true? And what do you feel is the sense of urgency when it comes to technology for your business?
I think about this in 2 different ways. I think about, changing because you absolutely have to, or changing because, you want to. And I think changing because you want to, it's because you could see that the world around you is changing and you need to develop a new skill set in order to be competitive in the new environment. And I think the other way is changing because you have to, because something's happening to your business today in real time, and you have to make changes to kind of fight the fires. And I think for us, it's probably a combination of both. Early on in 2005, 2006, when we started building our software, it's probably, we could have lived on index cards. It was nice that we decided to build the software where we didn't need to, but we did it. And looking back, today, it's hard for me to imagine having a business without this software. And originally, when we first started looking at software, we looked at Microsoft Dynamics GP, which is an ERP system. We've tried implementing and we weren't successful with it. And well, actually, first we built a basic CRM, then we wanted to go to Microsoft Dynamics, and then we decided that we'll build our own because we've implemented Microsoft Dynamics, it didn't work, and we decided to do something else. And I think I'm so grateful that we've made that. And when I say we, it's not that Lenny said, hey, we need to do this. It was a team effort. We all worked together. We decided this is the path to pursue. And today it's giving us a huge competitive advantage just because, we've already invested, 10 years of investing in 15 years investing in technology that prepared us to scale. So, today in the last 10 to 13, 14 months, the industry is going through transformation because of the pandemic. And not to say that we weren't disrupted and not to say that it was easy, but given how much demand there is for home products and how disrupted the supply chain is and how difficult it is to get consumer goods, our technology really made it much easier for us than for most people to handle, 5x or 4x volume at the very peak of demand during COVID. So
Definitely.
So I think to answer your question, yeah, I think the quote is true, right? So, we see it in our industry, in the furniture industry all the time. Some people just say, technology, the internet, whatever it is, it's not for me. That's for the next generation. I'm going to milk my business as long as I can, and I'm going to close up, and I've had a good life, and that's okay. And I think, there's merit to that. Like some people don't want to grow. Some people don't need to keep their business going forever and make it bigger and better. But if you want to improve, I feel not only do you need to have a digital transformation, but I feel like you need to keep on doing it. You just constantly need to reinvent your products, you reinvent your processes. You need to audit those things all the time to make sure that what you're doing today is still on trend and relevant, not going to die in the next 2 to 3 years.
Definitely. No, I think it's a really good point from your side, right? I think, like you said, change is always inevitable, right? It's either are you proactively pursuing it, right, and driving that change in advance to try to make it a competitive advantage, or are you being forced to change, right, or you're comfortable without changing and you'll eventually close shop. But for those that, are really looking to grow their business, to scale their business and learn from these lessons, you really kind of want to be proactive because you're putting yourself in a position to win, right? Kind of like you attested to, Lenny, when you started the CRM, you didn't expect it to have every feature that it had now, right? You didn't expect it to have the impact in COVID that it had for you now because all those things are unpredictable, right? But because you were proactive in understanding there's a better way to do this and constantly pushing, what is the better way, whether it's using technology or not, right now you've kind of found yourself in the position where all that compound effect of proactively driving change, has level set itself and you're able to somewhat measure, how well prepared you are based on what you've done over the last 10 years. So I think that was just a really good, way to put it. There's a lot of ways to do it, no matter, even if a business is super proactive, right? There's still those things that come out of left field that force you to change, right? A competitor changes a pricing strategy overnight, right? Or they change free delivery, or they change last mile delivery service, right? There's all these new things that can come out no matter what plan you have. But at least if you're being proactive, you more than likely have the systems in place or the team, to execute on those changes rapidly. And I think that's really, what that quote is all about. It's just trying to show that, more importantly, what the time that it took to go from the Industrial Revolution, right, to our first internet revolution was like 150 plus years, right? I think a lot of things that people don't realize is now change is happening a lot faster, right? Because of how far technology's progressed, cloud technology, software, hardware, What we saw the iPhone, right, go from the iPad to the core iPhone we have now in a decade, now could happen in a year and a half to 2 years, right, with the technology that we have, as many progressions. So I think that's just really the emphasis that we're trying to make with the slide of, what's coming in the next few years. If you're really trying to grow your business, not retire soon, you need to be proactively thinking, where are the areas that I can improve? What can come next? And, of course, at the front of that is failure, right? And leading with failure and ideation to find what works for you. And I think that's really, where we can lead into the next slide, Lenny and Brandon, based on, how you were mentioning, Lenny, right? You tried different systems, right? You initially went after Microsoft Dynamics, right, which is a well-known CRM, up there with the likes of HubSpot, Salesforce as well, right, but a bit more on the enterprise side. So this slide in particular is focusing, more on why 70% of transformations fail, right? Whether it's the transformation or the digital strategy, that's the step one of that full transformation strategy, as in, let's choose a CRM system that lets us centralize our data and automate email marketing, right? If that's their initial goal. 70% of those projects fail because of these 4 top reasons in priority order, right? So number one, especially nowadays, is the fatigue from continuous change and unclear goals, right, Lenny? I'm sure each time you went through the repetition of one of those systems, or you tried Dynamics, right, at least you left with the clear net of, this is why it did not work, right? This is why we're going to do what's next, and you incorporate your team members. But for a lot of organizations that are just letting the leadership deal with it, or just the IT team, right, they're not really speaking to the other team members, understanding the needs of the sales team or the warehouse specifically, and finding those goals that can be met in the platforms. They're more just swapping out technologies and finding out by the time they get to the last 10% that it doesn't meet everything they need it to, and from there they start again, right? And a lot of companies are just sick of going through that process, so it makes it a lot harder to get employee buy-in. The second one is just a lack of expertise in technology and digital transformations. This can be a lack of expertise from the C-level themselves, right? Maybe no one's technical, maybe it's a more traditional business. Everything's working. If it's not broken, don't fix it, right? But they need someone that can really help lead this charge. So a lot of people are failing just because they don't have that technical expertise as an engineering, or maybe a CIO or a CTO that can really lead the charge and has a full understanding of not just what technologies they can use, but most importantly, how it relates to the business goals. Point 3 kind of piggybacks off the previous one, right? Those that lack expertise in technology and understanding the difference between what Dynamics has to offer, what Odoo has to offer, what's the difference between a platform and a product versus custom, right, when it comes to coding and timelines. They tend to put technology first, right? They'll choose Salesforce because they got a great demo, and the sales guy said, yeah, it can do everything, that you need it to do. And when you lead with technology first, right, now you're changing your business for technology and not the other way around, where technology should just be your vehicle. And the last one is just, selected vendors lack the domain expertise and or the understanding of the business goals. And what we mean by that is the domain expertise, right, Lenny, would be if we were working with your organization, right, we would want someone that's in furniture manufacturing or textile manufacturing, right? And they understand all the nuances and the in and outs of how the standard supply chain works. Do you ship on pallets? Do you ship on containers, right? What are the logistics of that, standard lead times, so that they really bring that expertise to the project. And a lot of organizations lose a lot of time and money because they're paying great engineering talent who know how to code, but they don't know what they're coding, why they're doing it, or how it relates to the business. So at the end of the day, they're just there as a programmer, right? Not an engineer that's helping bring new ideas to the table and refine the approach. So these are the top 4 reasons. I'm curious, Lenny, as you went through, your initial transformations, or the first time that you went from index cards to the CRM, right, with Dynamics and those choices, would you say that any of these factors attributed to maybe why Dynamics didn't work, or why you then chose to go a different direction? What were some of the challenges or failures that you ran into as you initially started applying technology?
So I think, when we went with Microsoft Dynamics, we went not just for the CRM suite, but for the ERP suite to essentially run our whole business. And maybe at that point, we just weren't ready for it. And maybe today things would have been different, because we deployed the system, and it was a bit of an overkill. Lots of everything just took longer. Things taking instead of everything being faster and easier, it seems things just took longer. And that might have something to do with the partner who we chose to do the integration for us. It probably has, all of those things. I'm not a technical person, so, and the people who we had is, pretty young at that time, 10 years ago, like the managers. So we just weren't experienced. We didn't know what we were getting ourselves into, and it didn't work. And for us at that time, it was easier to develop our own software to essentially do everything that we need to do. We've already had a basic CRM, so we've upgraded it, added some ERP features, and we just added things that we need. We build the business processes, we build the workflows in the ERP to match the business processes as they existed in real life, not what the standards in the industry were. And we made a ton of mistakes. I think every single piece of code in our system was probably refactored, multiple times at this point, just because, we didn't architect it well enough for scale, certain components of it. We learned, but at this point, we don't even consider doing anything else because we really appreciate, having a team where if we need to make a change, we could just, go across the room and say, hey, can you move this button? Can you change a color? Can you change this feature? And if it's something small, it's done in a half hour, as opposed to scoping it out where it takes months to do.
Definitely.
So I think, we've made all the mistakes, just like I think, even the biggest companies, I think, make a lot of mistakes, and a lot of transformations go sour, at least at first. And I think that's just the expectation. You almost have to be ready that things will not go as planned, and just prep as best as you can to minimize the impact of the business.
Definitely. No, I think that's a really good emphasis to make, right, Lenny? And I'm curious, of course, as you went through that Dynamics, implementation, the initial one, right, from the ERP and the CRM side, of course, like you mentioned, you weren't technical, right? But what were some of maybe the red flags, right, or some of the leading signs that started you to say this is not going in the right direction? We need to switch it up, or was it a team member on your team that came to you? What kind of made you change tracks and realize, we are not heading in the right direction. Let's stop investing efforts this way.
I think it was the CEO at the time who was just not excited about it, and she said, look, we could just do it. We could do it ourselves, and we could do it better. It's just so complicated. It's just not working for us. Before that, we used, aside from the basic CRM that we had, we used Google Docs, Google Sheets, to manage our orders and keep track of things and change statuses. And they said, look, we don't need, Microsoft Dynamics is enterprise level software. I know companies that 500 million plus that are using Microsoft Dynamics.
Yeah.
And they said, we just need something basic to manage orders. Order comes in, we sent it to the vendor, we sent it to the warehouse, status changed. We need something very basic, and it'll be easy for us to do. And that's how it started. We built something very basic, very simple. And then we've been developing it for the last 10 plus years.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. And I think, Brandon, we were talking about in some of the previous episodes, right? It's all those incremental growths and essentially avoiding the shiny object syndrome, right? Or the shooting star, as you like to call it. And more often than not, it's very easy when you want to go look for your first system. And then you go get a demo from Salesforce and you see 80% of all the things you don't need, right? And 20% of what you do need. And you kind of get roped into, we could use that, right? And more often than not, a lot of businesses either extend their transformation too far, right? Or end up overpaying and not even getting what they need. So when it really comes in, I think the most important thing is having a way to measure what you want to do, right? To maintain your expectations. So Brandon, when it comes to, us guiding customers on establishing why they're choosing a technology or why they're even choosing to make these changes in their business, how do you help them identify what their true goals are or how they should measure, the success of what they're aiming to implement, whether it's a technology or a new SOP, as an example?
I'm just going to repeat kind of what Lenny said. He said a key word in there, and that word is scale. How quickly can we use this technology to scale our business? right? Because there's a lot of things that look great. There's a lot of systems that look great, and they can tie into Oracle, and they can tie into Microsoft, and they can tie into this and tie into that. But when you try to import and export and actually run them, they get to be clunky, man. And it's not fun dealing with systems. And every time you want to dot an I or cross a T, it costs $100,000. You have teams that come in and do it. It takes forever. I'm on the same boat as both of you. You know, it's like I want to have an in-house team with external support that can turn stuff around on a dime. Yeah, you know, that's what we need. We need to be able to scale quickly and adjust and adapt and evolve with the business as needed, whenever it's needed, however it's needed, you know, and quickly. And I'll just say one other quick thing here, and then I need to run to get my charger here because my laptop's going to go dead. So you can take me out of the stream as soon as I'm done here for 2 seconds. But you know, it's like, what is the technology going to do for you to increase sales and personalize your customer or prospect experiences? Just like the 3x5 card. What's their name? When someone walks into your store, comes within a certain radius of that store, perhaps they're given an ad or something else. When they walk into the store, hey, we haven't seen you in XYZ, or hey, we saw that you ate this type of food last time you were here. Do you want that? Or we saw that you bought this. Customers want that type of experience it's obviously automated, but it's using the information that they've gathered to present the next logical step. And that is digital transformation at its finest form. I know we can talk about big back-end systems and everything else, but at the core component of it, it is how can we get somebody to take the next logical step? Hey, Brandon, how are you? I saw that you purchased this 2 weeks ago. Are you ready for your next delivery? You know, like these types of preemptive next logical step ordering. And I think that's where Lenny's going with his business in terms of digital transformation. That's definitely where we're going, where we're reaching out to the customer before they actually know, like a plumber or heating guy or girl that reaches out and says, hey, last time we were there was 6 months ago. It's time for your appointment. Click through this text and we'll schedule right now. They click through the text, boom. Next thing you know, they're coming out to your house and done. That's the way business is transforming. That's why we say that those are businesses that don't get on board now are not going to be in business because they're going to be smoked by these faster, more agile startup companies that have invested the time, the resources, and the money into doing business in a more personal way at a lower cost. So, but I'm going to go grab my charger real quick. I hope you got something from that, man. I'm tuned up.
You got it. No, that was
I'll be back in 2 seconds.
That was a great one. You got it, Brandon. Go ahead. So, yeah, Lenny, I mean, Brandon led us straight into the next points, right? I think around any transformation, you want it to be, you know, high impact with low friction, right? Like you said, you don't want to be trying to bite off more than you can chew. You want to start off with what the initial intent was and make sure, more importantly, that lines up to the business goals, right, that you're aiming to achieve. So when it comes to digital transformations, they can be a little bit hard to measure, right? There's usually some hard impact points and then a lot of soft impact points where you're seeing the benefits spread throughout the organization. So this is just a straightforward slide here for those that are starting to prepare their digital transformation, or they've started and they're not sure if, you know, it's time to call it quits or pivot, right? These are some true ways to measure not just your beliefs, but really the outcomes of the transformation. So for anybody that's looking to start, you know, some of the key metrics that most businesses use, and they use all of these metrics to track the whole transformation, even if one of them is the core, is was there an increase to sales? Was there an increase to new customers, retention, and or satisfaction? Was the process quality improved? Was the process quantity improved? And then, of course, on the last side of things, have they enhanced the engineering productivity and design? Right. So, of course, depending on if your goal is to build an e-commerce store, whether it's to streamline operations internally or introduce a new product from the engineering side, you know, all of these 4 or 5 KPIs can be utilized. 1 or 2 will be your driver, but you really want to track all these things and see how the overall impact to the business is coming, or how you would like and intend that impact to come if you have not started your transformation yet. Some key points against what these KPIs are, or the key metrics and what can affect them, is, when it comes to increasing sales number, the number one way you can do that is exploring your customers' needs, right? Where are your customers coming from? Go back in your basic Google Analytics and see where is your traffic. Are the majority of them coming through the Facebook website and seeing your latest products there and purchasing directly from the website from that channel? Are they coming directly through phone? Is it text messaging, right? Once you understand the different possible tracks of your customers and can properly define each one of those, you can identify how to remove the friction from each one of those channels, as an example. The second one can be digital innovation investment. Right? When it comes to the technology side, if you can't find a system that can do it for you, or you found a much better way to do it internally and you want to build that product yourself to save costs and potentially resell it, digital innovation is a great way to drive the positive outcomes of those key metrics. And then the last two kind of go together, right? Data-informed decisions and tracking performance. You must do that to really know where your ROI is, when it's worth, cutting the ties. And most importantly, if your data is not right, you can't make the right decisions, let alone track the performance, right? So you really have to make sure that you've investigated these 4 things before you even look at setting a goal or driving a transformation around the key metrics on the left, because you want to know exactly how you plan on driving them and how the technology should come in play. So Lenny, I'm curious, of course, when it comes to the CRM, right, that's more on the sales side. You're starting to incorporate, some of the back office or ERP-like functionalities, right, to help streamline some activities that come from the sales side. So when you go to define a new module, right, or a new feature or aspect of your own system to build to streamline things, how do you go about defining what the goals are, or, how you're going to measure that to make sure that it was successfully implemented?
Frankly, I think we do a terrible job at it.
Fair enough.
So, and I think, so we don't build an ROI model. I think we've attempted over the years to try, but generally, the first time, we were using a Google Doc and it's just not scalable. We just needed something better. Today we have, in the furniture business, especially when you sell on the internet, it's almost like you have to run 5 businesses in one. You have to run a logistics company, you have to run a technology company, an e-commerce company, you have the customer service, you have marketing, and we're not big on third parties. We try to bring everything in-house. So in the very first, it was just pretty obvious what needed to be done. There was just no other way. Just no other way. As we've introduced new modules, it's just pretty much like where's the most painful part of the business. We have a team of developers, so we're always doing something, and it's what makes the most sense. I mean, at the end of the day, I'm sure the ROI is there, but we don't think about it because sometimes those things are pretty obvious. Our decision-making process is that we set long-term goals, we set annual goals, we set quarterly goals, and every project has a technology component. And when we decide as a team what our strategy is for the business, that's generally how we define, which module we develop or which feature. That has to tie back to the overall strategy for the company during that same period. So
sure.
Maybe this year we want to tackle a new product category. So how do we need to, change our workflows to reflect, our goals? So we generally sell big things. Our average ticket's several $1,000s, but we're considering small things like pillows and lamps where the average ticket might be $40 or $50. So we have to change how we present the product on our e-commerce website. We have to change how our ERP system handles the fulfillment, because the fulfillment of a pillow is very different than fulfillment of a bedroom set. We have to make sure that we provide training, and we have to make sure that, we consider different approaches and things like that. So we make the goal first, and then we think, how can technology help us achieve that goal? So it's not about this process is manual, and if we automated, we could save $10. It's more about how could it help the overall strategy?
Correct. And I think, that's a really good thing to emphasize, because, obviously there's not a hard number, right? You're not trying to say we save 10 hours, which is $20 a week, per person, X amount, and extrapolate it. a lot of the transformations, as long as they start with, what are the key bottlenecks of the business, right? And most importantly, like you mentioned, is, those are the easiest things to start with. You don't need a whole roadmap, right? You really just want to measure ROI if you're trying to be very innovative, introduce AI or something so far out of the box that you don't know what the return will be if you put a year in. But when it comes to identifying, how to transform your business, the very first and easiest way to start is just talking to the business users, right? Identifying those natural bottlenecks. And then from there, going back to the top and seeing where they impact the business. And I'm just curious, as you guys do projects, of course, you're introducing new features based on those bottlenecks, and there's some return because, of course, there's new products, new sales, right? Better processes and less complaints, right? Internally. But do you often look to have larger projects around potentially a whole new module that might take, let's say, 6 to 8 months? Or do you work more in, micro projects with quicker deliverables and more rapid testing? What is your more
micro projects with quicker deliverables?
Perfect. And why do you do that? What do you feel the benefits are, for your organization? Why have you chose not to, bite off moon things and keep it more shorter?
Yeah, it's a really big commitment to do a big project, because there's no guarantee that it's going to be successful. Now, I don't want to say half, but probably like 10 to 20% of things that we develop, we throw them in the garbage. Because it's just, we thought it would be a good idea. We feel like we've spent the time to validate that it'll be a good idea, but in practice, no one's using it. So we have to sunset it because, we just don't want like code sitting out there that's like no one's keeping track of. And, I think the really big successes are incremental changes. I think, there's less risk in incremental changes than in, big project and big features. And a lot of times, the big features get there incrementally. You kind of do a little bit, and you look back over the course of the year, it's like, holy crap, this was a really big deal that we did over the last couple of years without even planning it.
Exactly. I think that's the most important part that a lot of businesses don't understand. Right. I think the word transform makes it sound like you're changing state like once, rather than rapidly changing states constantly. And I think, I don't know if you know the actual term around it, but a lot of times in the IT world, they refer to this as the innovation effectiveness curve. Right. And it's a pretty simple curve. I'll just put it full screen for half a second so that everybody can see it. Right. But this is exactly what you just alluded to. Right. Larger projects come with more uncertainty. If you plan a 6-month project, it's most likely going to be an 8 to 12-month project, right? Because as you get in, there's so many questions, logic you didn't consider, and you don't get as much depth, right? You want to build an AI algorithm to automate invoices, but there's not a lot of depth on that, right? But like you were saying, Lenny, if we're looking to say, okay, we want to introduce a new product, this is phase 1, updating the e-commerce store, making that look better, having an automated experience for ordering. But then step 2 is, what are the changes to the ERP? Right, but technically those are separate projects, right, and separate modules and changes that are going on. So whether you obviously knew it or not, from a business side, of course, it's easier planning, more agile, lets you adapt and compound faster. But this is the actual innovation curve, and it just proves that you're better off putting smaller amounts of capital in at more quicker durations on smaller projects with much more depth, focusing on a very specific problem, than trying to moonshot, these projects and try to come around with a huge takeaway that's going to change your whole business overnight. So
if I could just add,
please.
Interrupt you. You said when you plan for a 6-month project, it usually takes 8 to 12 months. We usually triple any project estimate that we get, just because we feel that, and a lot of times you start developing something that's attaching to an existing system, and you open up Pandora's box, you realize about how many different dependencies you have, and there's so much uncertainty in development that you think something's simple and straightforward, but once you really start working on it, one little table could throw off your whole scope, and then it just takes much longer.
Definitely. And I think, another part too is, right, you've probably seen from the functional logic side, right? Like, I just want to take data from here and send it over there, right? But then there's all those scenarios. For every 5 scenarios we think of, there's another 10, right? That the engineer is asking you about. What about this? What if this person logs in? And those things just take more time to plan, right? And execute properly. And those that try to fast forward that process, right, often just fail their transformation or leave it half baked and move on to the next one. So Brandon, when it comes to, you know, the innovation effectiveness curve, these three, you know, core case studies that we want to, you know, go into today, I know a lot of, you know, the work that we do together and helping companies is to standardize processes, you know, making those things scalable. So how would you say, you know, that similar mindset relates to, you know, how you should approach technology or the concept of the innovation effectiveness curve itself?
Oh man, I'm thankful I have Lenny on here because he's breathing a breath of fresh air. And he's speaking the truth, like, hey, we need to sunset products. We've built products and ditched them. We didn't want code out there. Like, this is real stuff. Like, I listen to a lot of stuff. I see a lot of stuff. And I hear people saying it's going to be a perfect world. It's a perfect day. The sun's going to shine. It's going to be 85 degrees, no humidity, and it's going to be perfect. Just do it. And that's not the reality. You know, the reality is most of the time with these projects, we're aiming at a moving target. Now we know we have the target, right? And we have that goal that we have, but we need to get there incrementally. Just like Lenny said, is goals. You're going to get to that end. You're going to get to that end spot by taking incremental steps, right? Don't try to take that whole big piece. Don't try to eat the whole cookie at one time. Take a little bite, put it in your bag, take the subway, get to where you're going, eat another bite, you know, use that all day. Same way we drink water, right? I saw you drink water a second ago. You drink water, you don't slug the whole bottle at one time. You know, you drink a little bit because you're going to need to stay hydrated. With these projects, you're going to need to stay hydrated. And the way you do that is by breaking them down into smaller segments. So I would definitely recommend staying away from that shiny object. You know, I know it's easy to get sucked into that thing. I know it's easy to go to a show, a seminar, or something else, and you walk out of there on fire. Before we do anything, before I have anybody put any ink to paper or DocuSign or anything, I always say, go home, think about this for a day or two. Talk to your team for a day or two. I know a lot of salespeople, they don't want to do that. They want to do it on the spot. I get it. If you're selling like a car, something else, I understand that, you know. But with technology, if you're working with a true provider, with a true partner, they're going to have you kind of walk through the process and go through the loopholes. And I always like to punch the loopholes out and point them out and say, these are the weaknesses. I'm a big fan. I know some people aren't a big fan of this, but I always like to point the weaknesses out. These are some of the things that you may run into. So I'm laying out the objections. I'm laying out the roadblocks for them, because if I'm not assigning weaknesses to the project, they're going to assign weaknesses for me, and I'm not going to be in control of those weaknesses. So I always say assign the weaknesses so that the other people don't assign them to you. So I know that's kind of off topic a little bit, but I'm just letting it rip tonight. So hopefully
you're good, Brandon. I think it's you know, really aligned, especially with managing, you know, customer expectations and team expectations itself. You know, you really want to get it all out there and stop pretending it's going to be a fun transformation from day one, right? What are some of the real blockers or potential blockers that we might run into? What are some of the areas of the biggest risk on the project? And start proactively, you know, seeking out answers to those questions from day one, not when you run into the problem in phase 3 of the project, right? So Lenny, I think we're really excited to dive into these case studies with you, get your insights on, you know, how these companies have transformed, because at the end of the day, right, everybody that's joining this series or watching it, we're aiming to provide them, you know, real insights from real operators, right? Not diving into technical, but helping them identify ways that technology can take their business to the next level. So what we're going to be doing next, Lenny, is we're going to be walking through 3 separate case studies. Each one of them kind of touch on a different aspect of technology and overcoming a pain point. And we'd love to get, you know, your insights on them. We'll go deeper into these companies. I'm sure we all know them. And the first one that we would be starting with will be Coca-Cola, right? So Coca-Cola has obviously gone through a lot of digital transformations from all the different aspects of their company. The one that we'll be focusing specifically on today is going to be how the Coca-Cola bottlers, sale and service side, so those that work with the actual bottling distribution centers and manufacturers, how they digitize their entire document management process to save millions of dollars a year. So this is more of a lesson around, you know, vendor selection management, how you know when you have the right technology, And I've just outlined these case studies in a very simple way that everybody could understand. Right. So Lenny and Brandon, essentially what, Coca-Cola and the bottling service was looking to do is they were looking to improve the way that the information was collected and shared across the 72 Coca-Cola bottlers that they have throughout North America. This was around 2018, 2019, so I'm sure that number is higher now. But everything was on paper. All the purchase orders were on paper. All the sign-offs were on paper. All the manufacturing slips, shipping slips, everything was on paper or Excel sheets at a minimum. So the main challenges that they were facing is the very first time they went to make a switch to an automated document scanning and processing solution, they ended up kind of having a lot of difficulties, with that initial vendor. The solution didn't operate to the grade that they expected. And from there, they started experiencing, quickly diminishing returns on their overall objective, right? It was looking good, and then it started to keel off. And again, this kind of relates to, how you're going to track your transformation. Where is the ROI or the red flags, right? The ROI is not always a number. In transformations, it's more of a feeling, right? Until you can really measure the number itself. So the solution that they took is they said, we're not going to just go out and find more people to hire internally. We're not going to just try to take this over. Let's go find a specific digital leader, an IT partner, right, in this space specifically, only does document processing and automation. And they ended up finding that partner through a company called Ripcord. They focus specifically only on, robotic processing from the printing side and leveraging machine learning technology to scan the documents. So by being able to identify the right partner, leverage that area of expertise, and get the right product in place, they were essentially able to take all of the paper documents that they had in the millions of filing cabinets, insert them into the system, automatically remove any of the staples, scan and separate all the data, and then send the relevant documents to the customers, to the desired customers, with near zero error rates. Right? Obviously, much less than human error rates. Even on a nice day, humans, are somewhere between 5 to 15% margin of error. So the results of this, of course, after a year or so, was they save around more than $1 million a year, of course, processing manual papers and all the time that goes to it and the resources. They digitized over 25 million documents in the first 2 years. I'm sure that's more towards the 100 million now. And again, they've achieved near 0% error rates. So for those that don't understand, kind of the context of what 0% means, is when you utilize machine learning and AI, almost no algorithm, ever obtains 100%, but they do get to 99.00001. So that is the rate that they were able to achieve, utilizing this tool. So Lenny, I know you like to keep things in-house, right? But a big conversation that we have with a lot of companies, being a software and service provider ourselves, right, is kind of what's the difference between a software vendor and a software partner, right? So I'm curious, in your eyes, if you've ever seen a difference between those two before we give our explanation of them. And if you do go to work with people outside of your business, what were some of the key things that you were looking for?
It's hard because I think today's day, every vendor relationship has to be a partnership. So I don't know if I have I think what you're trying to get at is that, there are guys who just sell you the product, and then there are people who really take the time to figure things out. And I don't know if it could be any other way today. I think you just have to work with partners, right?
Correct.
I think there's so much software out there that does the same thing, and there's so many companies that do the same thing. So everything, it's all about service right now.
Yep.
And I think the code word here is partnership, right? So, you're not taking an equity stake in the business, but you're trying to work together, to solve, the challenges that exist in the business. So that's kind of how I look at it.
No, that's really, nail on the head, of course, especially when it comes to the service side, right? It's more of an indirect partnership. We like to say, like high tech partner, meaning they're just highly involved, right? Because that technology is very agile. So they're not saying we'll talk once a month, let us know what your problems are. You're talking to them 2-3 times a week, and they're more an extension of your team, right? And sometimes I think the misconnotation around the word vendor is, there's a lot of companies that don't do the managed service side, right? They don't fully implement the product, but they'll supply the skilled engineering talent to do so. But you have to understand in that scenario, now it's your job, right, to manage the project. And if you don't have expertise in that bucket, you just bought horsepower, but you have no idea, how to send it in the right direction. So that's just a small anecdote. A lot of, smaller companies, of course, as you're aware of, Lenny, if you go to Microsoft or resellers of these platforms, they're all typically a managed IT service company that will help you with that. But for those, that are looking to get some help on Salesforce or HubSpot, and you go to Upwork or Fiverr, you're kind of falling a little bit more into the freelancer or the vendor bucket, where they definitely have the expertise from a technology standpoint and skill set. But do they have the expertise of working with 20 other furniture companies to do the same thing, right? Where they can bring that knowledge to your project in addition to the technology. So that's just, really around the case study. On curious, Lenny, have you guys started implementing anything around, with basic machine learning or automating some of your business processes, to start to incorporate some of the newer technologies or ideals, if you will?
There's some things that we like to call them, AI kind of things, but it's reality, just like a set of rules, that we
Yes.
kind of programmed ourselves. So it's not like a machine learning that, algorithmically. Sorry, I'm sure you guys know.
That's an SAT word. Yes, no, that's a hard one.
that automatically improves. So to some people, they probably get surprised to see alerts about certain high-risk activity that happens in our environment. And it's like, please take a look at this. And it's like, where did that come from? But behind the scenes, it's just a set of rules that we use to trigger alerts. So we haven't really embraced machine learning or artificial intelligence in a very big way in a production environment. In a testing environment, we use things like, for example, we have probably 100,000 products on our website, and managing images is pretty complicated, especially when sometimes they get uploaded up, not upside down, not upright on the side, or even in our CRM, there's a native picture taking functionality. And sometimes the way you hold the phone makes a big difference of how the picture comes out, and you have to be able to recognize if the picture is upright. So we've tested some, machine learning and AI kind of things where it could, detect the picture. Not only could it detect the picture, but, next time it could get better. It could recognize that, it's the same, the chairs all look the same. But we haven't, it's not good enough where we've implemented it.
Understood. But you are starting to look in that direction. And like you said, a lot of people don't really understand AI, right? There's really good logic and coding to drive events. And then AI and machine learning is more, where you've given it the rules, but it starts to give you its own results based on its understanding of those rules.
Yeah, I think the only time I've seen AI and machine learning is in PowerPoint.
It's a very good example, though. I think a lot of people don't realize, like, the design insights, right? Is that kind of like the tab you're referring to, where it kind of tells you?
I was referring to, I think most people, I was saying something different, that when most people, they talk about having like machine learning and AI in their software, I think it doesn't leave their PowerPoint presentations. I think most people, and I've actually heard a case about where a company raised a lot of money based on their AI machine learning capabilities, when they were really just paying people in India to do the work.
Yes.
So
sounds about right. No, that's an even better point. I missed the not referencing PowerPoint AI, but that it's all on paper, as a moonshot. No one's really fully executing on those ideas.
Yeah, just my perspective.
I think it's a fair one at that. And that can lead us straight into our second case study here. Brandon, this is going to tee us up on the data side for sure. Not sure if a lot of people follow football, but I'm sure most people know who the San Francisco 49ers are. So this specific case study is, not more around what went wrong with the vendor or choosing the right technology, but it's how companies are embracing analytics, right? Leveraging data to no longer, react to events that have happened, but better predict, right, and respond in advance. So this example specifically is SAP. They built a custom solution with San Francisco 49ers. And the whole goal of it was to gain better visibility across all the operations in the stadium on game day in real time. So, of course, the previous challenge or the challenge with the previous process was that it required them to pull this data from many different locations, right? On top of that, all the data wasn't in the system. And then in order to analyze it, a hodgepodge, right? A mixture of analog and digital sources. So they're using Excel sheets, Power BI, Tableau, right? And 3 different departments analyzing their own data 3 separate ways with none of them getting it from the same source, right? So they never saw the same results. So in order to, combat this, their chief strategy officer, Moon Javid, implemented a custom game day solution with SAP, which was eventually called Executive Huddle, and has now actually been moved to be implemented with a few other teams, Tampa Bay being one of them. And I believe the Giants and the Jets looked at it, but knowing us, we didn't implement it. But essentially what these systems allow them to do is it allows them to see the data across all of their operations in real time across the entire venue. So picture things from where are all of the guest parking, right? Which parking garage is filling up the most? Because that's going to be what gates that they all walk to the most, right? That have the most fans coming in. What concession lines have the longest lines, right? Where are all of those fans based on their iPhones throughout the entire venue? And then from there, more importantly, internal things like streamlining operations for inventory, for alerts when the food inventory is low at a specific concession, right? They need more chicken nuggets. They just put the last ones in. And once that batch is done in 20 minutes, there's no more. As well as, just helping them understand, we have tons of traffic flow here and giving their employees the option to say, send an alert without having to call 3 people to try to get them to come to the gate. So all of this was just around the game day experience itself again, and using all this predictive data to identify how to quickly respond or predict events that are happening. The results of this were, after they examined all of their ticket data, they were able to identify what are the top 3 locations that the majority of the fans come through and properly appropriate their staff there, right? So that they could reduce those wait times. Instead of having 5 guys at every entrance point, they had 2 at the other ones and 10 at the 3 core ones, as an example. The second key takeaway was more than 40% of the issues resolved, were identified as pre-game issues, meaning that this team could actually resolve 40% of the issues before they even take place and minimize that negative impact on the customer's experience, right? Of course, the majority of it's getting into the stadium, finding the right parking, getting to the concession stands first, and now we can direct fans to concession stands that have lower lines. And of course, the net outcome of all of these soft data points and being able to be there at the right time, right, is an overall increase in fan or customer satisfaction, which they say has been up by around 10 to 15% since 2008 when they initially implemented this system. So Brandon, of course, we've been diving into data, touching on it in different ways from a CRM and how to maintain it. But I think one of the key things we want to focus on today is helping people understand that there's actually, 3 levels of analytics, right? There's your first tier, which is where you can diagnose. There's your second tier where you can use that data to react and make data-driven decisions in the future, but you can't make them in real time, right? And then now there's this more third bucket, which we can call real-time data or predictive analytics, right? Where it's helping you predict events and act first. So what's kind of your advice to, companies or just your overall thoughts, on these 3 segments of data and how companies should really look to implement or leverage the existing data that they have in order to get results, like the 49ers and others have?
Yeah, I know we're running a little bit over time here, so I'll be really short, but I will pack a big punch with what I say here. And I think you can do less with more. And this is what I say to every business out there. Do you want to drive out of the rear view mirror, or do you want to drive out of the front windshield? The choice is yours. Utilize technology, partner up, get around people like Lenny, like yourself, Brian, that are doing the right things in business, that have growth, that have a daily plan, that have scaled, that have goals, that are reaching where they want to go through incremental steps. Ask them questions. That's really the number one. Those I know I said 10 different things in there, but those are really the most important parts in anything to do with this. And You know, it's just you gotta, when you're driving in that front windshield, man, that's why it's big. You know, you gotta just look, keep that peripheral vision open, be ready. You're gonna hit a roadblock, take a left, go around it. Don't ask questions. I hate this roadblock. Don't complain. Just take the left, go around it. You know, when you're lost, ask for directions. You know, that's another thing. I'm driving with my wife. We get lost. I don't want to ask for direction. I think I know where I'm going. I have Google telling me where I'm supposed to go. I don't want to listen. You know, so ask questions, listen, take suggestions, keep moving forward. So I'll be quiet with that.
That sounds great, Brandon. Yeah, but I know we'll push the finish here in around 15 to 20 more minutes. I think we're pacing well. But Lenny, the last case study is going to be the one that aligns us the most. But before we jump into that, just an anecdote from your side, how is your company looking to utilize data? And what are some of just the key tools or the key things that you look at on a monthly basis yourself when it comes to the data of your organization?
I think we look at the most obvious things. Like we break things up into different segments and we look at which segment's performing better. So we have 100 vendors and we have, 50 states that we sell into. So we could say, vendor number 27, they're doing better in Montana for some reason. And if we look at exceptions, whether positive or negative, we try to investigate what's happening. What can we learn to do better? And lots of things like that in almost every category as it relates to coupons, to payment methods, to product damages. We look at the Net Promoter Score, which is a customer satisfaction metric. And we try to look for trends among our partners, whether it's vendor partners or delivery partners or even our internal staff that's touched an order, to see if we can pick up trends. So just, all kinds of data, obviously, things like margin, revenue by category, and things like that.
And I'm sure like each time, right, like you started, you had your basic report, and then you can always add more and more parameters in, right, and the insights get better over time. Have you guys kind of gone through that process over the years?
We use a third-party BI package, so it's super robust.
Allows you to manipulate it in any way.
Yeah. It brings the data that we have in our own database, plus it brings in, external things like, phone call records and, advertising metrics from advertising vendors, and, kind of allows us to link all the data together and get some business intelligence.
Actionable insights. No, that's great. And I think, that's really what people just have to recognize. There's a lot of easy ways to get started. You don't have to have a huge system of your data, but you got to get started with the most basic reports, and then you can continue to build and refine from there. So that can lead us straight into our last case study. Lenny, you might have heard of this company a few times here and there, especially being in the furniture space. But of course, one of the biggest transformation stories over the last 2 years is going to be Ikea, right? And no problem, Lenny, I just saw your time there. So we'll run through the last one here and try to get some of your key takeaways as well. So when it comes to Ikea, they've been doing tons of digital transformation. I wanted to focus specifically on what they've been doing to change the customer side and the warehouse side. So of course, their main objective recently has been changing their whole customer experience, right? Younger customers don't like to go walk through the whole warehouse, and we hate to set up our own stuff, especially when it takes 2 to 3 hours, right? So one of their biggest challenges were, how can they take this brick and mortar experience, which started to struggle due to COVID, right? In the last year or so, they've closed around 75% of their store locations, and they needed to find a way to effectively move online, but still leverage, right, the majority of their infrastructure and the way that they do business, right? So there's kind of 3 key solutions here that led to the biggest changes. So I'll hit them quick. The biggest one was their acquisition of TaskRabbit, right? TaskRabbit, for people who don't know, is a very on-demand, small task, 1 to 3 hour service where someone can come set up your furniture, your TV stand, etc., right? So it removed the big traction point or friction point where customers hated getting the Ikea furniture for cheap, but having to spend 5 hours trying to read their instructions. The second one was the introduction of smart home products, right? Before this, they started carrying, different vendors and things like that. But now that they've continued to grow, they've built their own smart home products. They're starting to incorporate those at, their same great pricing while building a great consumer experience around those. And also introducing their Ikea Place app, right, which is their app that utilizes AR and enables you to take the furniture and place it in your home so you can see what the couch looks like in your living room, right? Because of some of these key changes, in addition to switching how they leverage, their retail locations to start using them more as fulfillment centers as well, they've been able to triple their e-commerce sales over the last 3 years. They've been able to provide 25% of any rendering customers create are all 3D, right? High quality renderings that the majority of the customers have created themselves. And overall customer satisfaction, has increased dramatically due to the personalization of these services, like the AR kit and letting you see the furniture in your home, and the done for you services like TaskRabbit. So Lenny, I know we're getting tight here. I know you have around 5 minutes or so, but I'm sure, a lot of these challenges or opportunities also relate to your business. So what is just your overall insight or takeaway on, what Ikea is doing, and what are some of the things that you feel are relatable or things that you may look to implement in your business?
It's hard for me to relate to Ikea because I think their revenue is like 50 billion.
Fair.
So I think they're just in a different scale. So, naturally things they have done, I think are effective for Ikea. For us acquiring TaskRabbit or, perhaps, the 3D app for 100,000 products today is just out of scope, but I think for Ikea it probably works.
That makes a lot of sense. Are there any of the things on the customer side that, of course, when it comes to the degree and the depth that Ikea can move, it's quite different than any of us on this call. But are there any of the things that, have made you thought of opportunities in your business when it comes to maybe a direct customer app or letting the customers see the furniture in their home?
I mean, I think in the business hour scale, which is tiny compared to Ikea, our competitive advantage is personalization. So somebody starts their journey online, they come into the store, the person who's helping them in the store knows exactly, who they are, which pages they visited, how much time they spent on each page, if they've called into our call center, if they've emailed, if they went on live chat, if they have prior purchases. So we provide tools to our sales associates so they know exactly who they're talking to. And customers really appreciate that. Even when they call into our call center, their profile just pops up on the screen. So the reps know exactly who they are and they don't have to go through a lengthy validation process. So,
Definitely.
we're, as a business, I think we're always looking to improve our, I want to say user experience, a customer experience, always try to make things better. And, today it's all about technology. Right now we're looking at a solution which is going to write handwritten notes programmatically, and send them out to customers with a stamp and a handwritten address, looking to integrate with a company that has a handwriting robot.
Very nice.
So, I think it'll improve the customer experience using technology.
Certainly. And I think, quick, while we still have another minute or two on, you just want to get your thoughts on it, because I think we talked offline once about it, right? And maybe the potential of, when it comes to the next generation of technologies, right, being able to use IoT, right, and basic sensors and put them on different elements of the showroom so you know what zones people went into, right? Was it dining room? Was it living room? Was it outdoor furniture? And being able to have that, that's where this next generation of technology adds in, another layer of data, another area to personalize and further automate that experience. So really just wanted to make sure we touched on that. Lenny, I know it's getting tight for you on your end. Brandon, I know we're feeling the walls come in on all of our sides, but I think it might be good to maybe set up a second round in the future and go a bit deeper. But Lenny, I really appreciate your time. I think you gave some extremely valuable insights that will help a lot of businesses and operators here. I definitely hope we can dig in, a bit more in the future and find some more value to bring to this community. But Brandon, of course, thank you for your time as well. Everybody, that will wrap up the third episode here of the How to Define Your Digital Journey web series. We'll be having the fourth episode of this 4-part series next Wednesday at 6:30, so be sure to tune in. And when it comes to finding Lenny, Emma Mason, Greenboard, all of his information is straight on our website. Please be sure to reach out to him on LinkedIn. Check out his companies, and if you need furniture, they've got some great deals going on right now. Head to go.incipientcorp.com/how to define your digital journey. And we look forward to seeing all of you guys next week. Brandon and Lenny, thanks again, and have a great night.
Yeah, great job, man. Great job. Thanks, Lenny.
Thanks.
Brian.